Solar winds swept clean this planet 4.5 billion years ago. Earth thrived. Its natural elements helped it to flourish, and its bounty was for all to share. Then a life form of superior intelligence evolved, and for a while lived in harmony with the Earth. But paradise has been put into jeopardy. The motives are irrelevant. The consequences, severe. The remedy is written. The elements of life are clear.
In this edition of Elements, we join 40,000 Chinese revelers at the Chung Chao Bun Festival and feed the special buns, or food of the ghosts, to spirits in the afterlife. The celebration commemorates the end of a plague outbreak on the island 200 years ago. Baroness Patricia Scotland recently became the first British minister to visit Antarctica. During her fact-finding tour, she visited the British Antarctic Survey Research Station and saw some of the groundbreaking environmental science being done in this icy wilderness. Cockfighting is one tradition they take very seriously in Thailand. So seriously that many bird owners are now using custom-made rooster treadmills to keep their prize-winning champions fighting fit. But first to Thailand, where the country's crocodile industry is being run off its feet. China and Taiwan have long been lovers of croc meat, but now demand is heading west. Europeans have tended to favour the skins as coveted fashion accessories, but since mad cow and foot and mouth disease have swept across Europe, it's the meat that's become the latest rage. Sriracha Crocodile Farm east of Bangkok is one of the country's largest producers of crocodile meat. It houses more than 50,000 crocodiles, exporting 30,000 carcasses a year. Marketing manager Katom Temsiripong says Europeans are now wary of eating pork and beef because of the recent spate of disease. He believes the meat-deprived nations are looking for a safe alternative. Mad cow and foot and mouth can't affect crocodiles, which makes their meat an excellent alternative. The farm produces about 5 tons of crocodile meat a month and is having a hard time meeting the new demand from Europe. The company exported its first ton of meat to Germany recently and has a second shipment ready to go. Most of the farm's revenue comes from exporting crocodile skins. Katom says they are an easy animal to farm, and he expects more Thais to become interested in crocodile farming once they realise the potential profits involved. Orders for crocodile meat from China and Hong Kong are also on the rise, partly because of international crackdowns on other, more exotic meats. Until recently, there'd been a big demand in China for bear paws, but now that it's illegal to eat them, customers are turning to crocodile forefeet as a tasty alternative. In its effort to learn more about our home world, NASA has launched a variety of experiments using scientific balloons, sounding rockets, high-altitude reconnaissance aircraft, and one of the fastest planes to ever streak across the sky. Scientists are now looking at a new generation of inexpensive aircraft made specifically for high-altitude studies. Called Perseus, it's shown here in a hangar at NASA's Flight Research Center in California. This remote-control glider has a deceptively simple design. Its thin, wispy wings and large 15-foot prop are made of strong, ultralight composite materials. The plane carries oxygen tanks to help fuel its gas-powered engine when climbing into the upper reaches of the atmosphere. It has the ability to fly twice as high as a commercial jetliner. Conceived by Aurora Flight Sciences at Manassas, Virginia, Perseus can carry 110 pounds of science payload. NASA hopes to eventually commission a fleet of inexpensive global watches that can be launched anywhere in the world. The science community is generally regarded as a poor community, so vehicles like these are designed to allow a cost-effective way of retrieving the type of detailed information space scientists require, but often can't afford. And there are several distinct advantages in keeping the pilot on the ground while a computer adjusts the flight controls. It's not only much safer, but allows for more equipment to be carried aloft. Perseus-like aircraft may enhance important studies of Earth's protective ozone shield over the North and South Poles, both very hostile environments. Manned flights over these areas can be very dangerous due to the cold temperatures and the inability to glide home from Antarctica in an engine-out situation. Remotely controlled vehicles are under far less constraints than when a pilot is in the cockpit. This also allows the team to take some calculated risks and often greatly reduce development time. A single software change to a manned aircraft could halt flight operations for months, but Perseus could be in the air the very next day. Minor mechanical changes can also be made in a matter of hours, as nobody's life is put at risk. Much of the design work that made Perseus possible grew out of a human-powered flight project at MIT called Daedalus. In 1988, this 69-pound craft flew a distance of 72 miles between the Greek islands of Crete and Santorini. The ultralight, long, flexible wings were able to keep the plane aloft at low speeds, breaking new ground in aerodynamics. Building on their success, several members of the MIT team branched out to form Aurora. In creating Perseus, they borrowed from the shape and design of the Daedalus wings. Greg Zak was one of 5 cyclist pilots of the Daedalus project. Capitalizing on his skill in flying gliders and remotely controlled model airplanes, Zak has gone on to pilot Perseus. Aurora uses an open stretch of dry desert lake bed for flight testing. When all systems are set, the truck accelerates, gently lifting Perseus into the air like a kite on a string. At 700 feet, the tow line is released and the ground team engages the propeller. Perseus is free. During flight operations, Zak communicates with another pilot, Frank Stanley, who sits at a duplicate flight console inside the ground station. Zak must keep the plane in sight during takeoffs and landings. Once airborne, Frank can take over Perseus's control. Martin Gomez and Tom Clancy help Stanley with the engineering of the plane and keep communication ties with the NASA tower and launch team at the lakebed. Eventually, flight testing will reach altitudes of 80 to 90,000 feet, where vital atmospheric research can begin. Both the slow speed of the craft and the ability for the payload to be in the nose make it ideal for this type of work. Scientists argue that to positively determine the effects of ozone depletion by man-made chemicals or aircraft exhaust, instruments need to fly slowly through specific areas of the upper atmosphere. Perseus is scheduled to attempt to fly higher than any propeller-driven, remotely controlled aircraft, a tremendous technical leap forward. The end result of all this time and effort will be a better understanding of the Earth's atmosphere, and that's something that gives the team a great sense of pride. Perseus, NASA's newest global watcher, the first in a family of low-cost airplanes designed to further our understanding of the world we live in. About 40,000 people joined the Chung Chau Bun Festival recently, with 3,000 taking part in a procession which commemorates the end of a plague outbreak on the island 200 years ago. 3 giant bamboo towers were built and covered with thousands of steamed buns, known as the food of the ghosts. Once the ghosts have had their fill, the buns are then distributed to the people, bringing them good fortune. Since Chung Chau is traditionally an island of fishermen, their most revered divinity is Pai Ti, the god of water and spirit of the north. He's believed to have the power to bestow smooth sailing for fishing boats and good catches for their crews. Another important deity whose images add a further splash of oriental mysticism is Tin Hau, the goddess of the sea and protector of all fishermen and seafarers. The festival runs over 8 days, with religious ceremonies and opera performances. But the highlight of the week is the breathtaking procession. It's a swirl of colour as lion dancers, Kung Fu Club members and Taoist priests wind their way through the narrow streets. Youngsters dressed as mythological figures in traditional costumes and modern Chinese heroes are the stars of the parade. They're tied to an intricate system of rods and wires and appear to magically float above the heads of the crowd. Accompanying the floats are acrobats, unicorn dancers and musicians banging on drums and gongs to scare away the evil spirits. While most traditions have remained intact, one has gone by the wayside. Prior to 1978, hundreds of young men would scurry up the 3 towers and throw the buns down to the waiting crowd below. In '78, the bamboo structure of the bun tower bent in the middle and many climbers were seriously injured. While the towers are still part of the festivities, most of the action is kept safely on the ground. Unlike the Bun Festival, a festival in Mexico pays tribute to an animal. The burro, commonly associated with stubbornness and often underappreciated as a workhorse, has never really received its due. But for the past 40 years, the people of the small town of Otumba, Mexico, have recognized and paid homage to the animal for its hard work and endurance in the fields with the Festival of the Burro. The Burro Celebration Day begins with a polo match between 2 local teams. The participants play with broomsticks, knocking about an oversized plastic ball to score goals. Most importantly, the contestants, 4 on each side, are proudly mounted on a mangy assortment of donkeys. Imbued with tradition and more than a dose of tongue-in-cheek, the annual National Donkey Festival drew a record crowd to Otumba's tree-lined Central Square recently. The final and most popular event of the day, the parade, is characterized by burros in costume. It's popular with the people, but not necessarily with the donkeys. Several asses are dressed up as popular Mexican personalities such as President Fox and Subcommandant Marcos. The animal is a popular figure in everyday Mexican life and often appears in editorial cartoons characterizing Mexicans themselves. Baroness Scotland steps onto the tarmac in the British Antarctic Territory, the first British minister to ever do so. She made the 10,000-mile trip to Antarctica to see some of the scientific research work being carried out here by the 400 scientists of the British Antarctic Survey, or bass.
The data over a long period of time.
At Fossil Bluff, she saw for herself the signs of climate change. Previously snow-covered in rock, Antarctica is becoming exposed as ice and snow melt. But BAS director Chris Rapley told the minister that examination of the Antarctic soil has shown that a similar temperature rise has occurred here in previous millennia. So whether today's warming was a result of man-made greenhouse gases was still an open question. The foreign minister also had the task of unveiling new names for several buildings at the BAS base at Rothera.
You all have to hold your breath and hope that it works.
She paid tribute to the work of BAS, which she said offered crucial input to government decisions on issues such as climate change and ozone depletion. Before leaving, the minister also had a chance to visit Anchorage Island in the company of ecologist Peter Convey, who's studying the unique and fragile biodiversity of this last great icy wilderness. During the visit, Baroness Scotland stressed Britain's support for the Antarctic Treaty, which is designed to safeguard the continent for peaceful research work free from commercial and military exploitation and pollution. And while this looks like the Antarctic, it's actually the National Maritime Museum in Greenwich, London, in summer. The blanket of snow on the ground isn't real, but the stories of tragedy and triumph inside the new and unique exhibition are. South, the race to the pole, brings together for the first time film, photos and relics from one of the last great exploration adventures into the unknown. It's a tribute to three great Antarctic pioneers, British explorers Sir Ernest Shackleton and Captain Robert Scott, and the Norwegian hero Captain Roald Amundsen, who beat them all to become the first to reach the South Pole. On public display for the first time, the camera used to record Captain Scott's arrival at the South Pole. The group arrived only to find that Amundsen had beaten them to it. Tragically, Scott died in a blizzard just 11 miles from the food and shelter of his base camp. The film and the camera were found in the tent with the bodies, and it was only after the film was taken and developed that the evidence proved that they reached the pole. A tribute to all three explorers, the exhibition also pays tribute to the man who was first to conquer the South Pole and survived to tell the tale. The relics of Roald Amundsen's epic adventure, including a wolf skin suit, show how he did it. Almost a century after their expeditions, the adventures of the world's great Antarctic explorers are still compelling and relevant as humankind faces new frontiers to explore beyond the boundaries of Earth. For hundreds of years, cockfighting has been a much-loved pastime in Thailand. In villages around the country and even in the capital Bangkok, men crowd around cardboard rings and watch the exciting but brutal battles. But it's also big business, with owners of pedigreed gamecocks able to make up to $1 million baht or $22,000 in prize money from each competition. With so much to be gained, more and more breeders are getting serious about taking care of their birds. And what better way to keep a cock strong and healthy than a custom-made treadmill? Tawiche Tongray is Thailand's only cock treadmill distributor. He claims his contraptions help improve the stamina of the birds and keep them from getting fat. According to Tongray, roosters that have been trained on the treadmills are fully fit. When they get into the ring, their legs are strong and their footwork never stops. Each treadmill has a small motor which powers a belt that can be sped up or slowed down during training. The roosters are made to run for 5 minutes a day to start with, then 10 and finally 20 minutes, the same length as each round during a cockfight. The treadmills cost about 10,000 baht or $220, and there's already been a lot of interest in them from overseas cock owners. But it's not just treadmills that owners are turning to keep their animals healthy. Cock shops around the country offer breeders a range of specialized medicines for their birds, from heart strength tablets to anti-diarrhea capsules. There are also cock foot pads, hand-knitted cock muzzles and cock leg bands, used in order to minimise the damage to one's prized and profitable rooster. In recent years, the cockfighting industry has tried to clean up its reputation as being a cruel sport. Under new rules, official fights last for 5 rounds of 5 minutes each. Animal rights groups continue to oppose the tradition, claiming it's an inhumane sport that encourages animal abuse. While even training sessions are inclined to get bloody at times, in rural bouts it's not uncommon for birds to fight 12 grueling rounds, lasting up to 25 minutes each. Some die during the fights, but are simply replaced by the next would-be champion. On a more pleasant note, Malaysian entrepreneurs are raising little swiftlets, renovating old buildings and setting up new ones to cater to a rising demand for the wildly popular Chinese delicacy, bird's nest soup. More than 400 people flocked to a one-day seminar on bird's nest cultivation in Penang State recently, more than double the number the organisers had expected, as rumours of swift profits took wing. Chinese herb retailer Yu Yang Sang is a major dealer in the delicacy, with sales of up to 10 million ringgit, the equivalent of $2.6 million a year. The nests are sold between a few hundred to thousands of ringgit for a pack of 6 or 12, which are believed to have beneficial effects on circulation and complexion. In recent years, entrepreneurs have found that the swift, a relative of the hummingbird, can be enticed to nest in urban buildings, where harvesting can be controlled and profits are close at hand. While some equip old crumbling buildings for the bird hotel, others are constructing their own purpose-built 4-story buildings with cooling systems and stereo speakers. The stereo systems are used to play recorded bird songs to attract swifts. Others buy humidifiers that regularly blast a cooling mist to keep the temperature in the ideal 25 to 28 Celsius range. According to the Wildlife Department, there were just over 150 birdhouses in the whole of Malaysia 3 years ago. Today there are more than 2,000. The white nest swift uses its saliva to string together a tiny gauze-like nest that is used to make the delicacy. Traditionally, men track the birds to isolated caves and climb bamboo poles to knock the nests from the walls. Former cave harvester and now consultant to the new style bird hotels, Murni Lana, says the new structures are more hygienic and far safer than going to the caves. The birdhouse is dim with the pungent smell of droppings. Dozens of swifts shoot in and out through a hole in the wall. The birds navigate using echolocation. Huge profits have encouraged many nest farmers to launch bird businesses, sending real estate prices in small towns soaring.